Welcome to
yeah.
our final conversation of the day. We have our backstage guest popping in. Thanks for staying with us for yesterday and today. We've had some amazing conversations so far, talking to different founders and acceleration partners and learning more about the CPG ecosystem, especially how it relates at retail. I'm really excited for this conversation between Ari, Jen, and Matt. It's just an unbelievable wealth of experience looking at all the brands they've been at, the roles they've held. Even in backstage, we noticed there were like really interesting overlaps between how the companies had intersected in the past. So thank you to the three of you for coming. Really excited to dive in to the topic of scaling, because I know that's on pretty much everybody's mind that has a brand. And I would love to throw it over to each of you individually to explain, what did you start? What did you scale? And now what are you running? And let's hear it from you. So Jen, if you want to kick us off.
I am so sorry. I had a minor emergency here. So sorry, I had to jump off for one quick second. But a pleasure to be here. I'm Jen. I am the CEO currently of Goodles, the mac and cheese company. If you guys haven't had Goodles, hopefully you guys can try it. But this is my, I guess, fourth time as a CEO. 3 of them I was founder. My first 2 companies were software companies that helped foodie CPGs grow much faster. Both of those were acquired. And then this is my second kind of healthy food CPG. Neither have been acquired yet, but both definitely at the scale phase and growing strong. So so even though Goodles is we launched 18 months ago, but it's going so fast. So I'm kind of learning every single minute of the day here, but definitely have made so many mistakes and just happy to share all of my learnings that I wish others had shared with me along the journey. So yeah, happy to be here and super excited to be with this amazing crew. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ari?
Well, first of all, I want to say Goodles has only been around for 18 months. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, great work. That is just rocket ship growth right there, the definition of it. Hi, everybody. Ari Raz here. In 2015, I co-founded a brand called Once Upon a Farm out of a garage in San Diego. That brand is now the fastest growing kids nutrition brand in the country, having done over 100 million in sales in the last 52 weeks alone. I was very fortunate to bring on one of our very first industry investors to join the company as CEO in September of 2017. That person was John Foraker, who had previously been the 18-year CEO of Annie's Organic. And he became CEO of Once Upon a Farm. I became president, and I had the pleasure of working under him, as well as working with actress Jennifer Garner to really, again, rocket ship, grow that brand like a rocket ship over the course of about, about 4 years. After 4 years as president of Once Upon a Farm, I left to join the Coconut Cult, which is the brand I'm with today as CEO. And I'm very pleased to say that we are, after a few years of stagnant growth, we're now on a rocket ship track, and it's very exciting to be a part of. So thank you for having me.
Excited that you're here. Matt?
Hey everybody, Matt Clifford. I poked around in the room, and so it's just so good to see a lot of familiar names and faces too. Also just great to be here with Ari's a really good friend, and Jen and I just shared a similar backstory. So I love how small this industry is. I've been in the industry for like 15 years now. We started a brand with 2 good friends in 2011, and that's Coway Suplissi and Nick Ingersoll, the co-founders of Bar Nana. And we've built that brand over the last couple of years. And just over the last 2 years, I took a new gig here, and I'm the CEO of CanDo, which is the #2 selling protein bar in the US right now in Whole Foods on a 52-week basis. And we're early days though. So it's kind of like, I feel like Jen, Ari, and I are kind of in a similar boat right now with these fast scaling brands in different categories. But it's been a fun ride. I've made plenty of mistakes over my career. I'm hoping to make less. And
Make different ones. You'll make different ones, not the same, hopefully.
Yeah, I always joke where we only want to pay the experience tax once, right? So just different mistakes. Exactly. It's hard to see on the corner, but it's been a fun ride. You know, on the CanDo front, we make a product called Crisp, which is a protein bar, and that's widely distributed in the natural channel. And yeah, having fun with it.
And Matt, that's exactly where I was going to take us with the next question about experience and mistakes. And I think I asked both you and Ari, because you're both in San Diego, the first time we met. We sat down. I was like, if you were me and you were going back to the beginning, you're a founder again, doing it all over, what would you tell yourself? Like, what did you learn along the way of building your brands that you would tell that early stage person that may be tuning into the call today, specific to CPG, what they should be considering for their brand?
Yeah, Ari, you wanna go
Sure.
first?
Yeah, I'll say something and then hopefully it'll be different from what you say. But what I'm thinking, what comes to mind immediately is, you know, don't get distracted. It's so easy as an early stage founder, you know, you just start getting all of this inbound from people and there's all these opportunities that pop up. You know, you need to, from the very beginning, have a very, very clear vision and idea of how you want to go about building your brand. Hopefully, you know, with some great advisors who have experience that you can tap into as well. Don't go shiny object chasing, you know, stick to your guns, stick to your core. If the core is not working, right, then you need to iterate, then you need to shift, but like, make sure you have what you actually do and what your plan is to grow it working before you actually try to do anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I have a very similar vibe. You know, when we're younger and earlier inexperienced, it's just all about proving something out. And, you know, there's that trope around throwing, you know, pasta at the wall and seeing what sticks. But I feel like now, after going through it a couple of times, it's, you have to be throwing the pasta at the wall. But then once one has any remnants of sticking, just go a mile deep and focus and prove that out. And, you know, I think Ari and I talk about a lot is just, you know, proving out velocity at a core product line at a core retailer early and consistent, and then replicating that instead of proving it out small and then going everywhere, right? Because most of the times, if you're not ready to go that quick, it could get really messy quick. So I'd say just prove it out in a very focused region, retailer, item, and keep doing that. Also, the capital markets today are supporting that, which is great, right? They've changed a bit. So I think it's a better market to be able to support that strategy.
I don't disagree with it, but there's definitely a different way to do it. We just kind of knew that we were going to be at scale right away. So we just started with a national distribution. And didn't go that direction. So I do think that there are different ways to do it. You can start kind of in the small natural channel and kind of work your way up. But if you know that you want to be a mass brand and that you want to take on mass incumbents, that I think that's another route to doing it. But I definitely, even if, you know, we're taking on Kraft and Annie's out there in the world and you know, are doing so pretty effectively, pretty fast, you still have to pick your bowling pin. Like, our marketing spend is nothing compared to these big incumbents. And so I think my advice, which is similar to you guys, is I think about it as like bowling pins. Decide and be really, really clear about what that initial bowling pin is that you want to knock down. It's your target audience. It's usually I believe that it shouldn't be exactly what everyone else is doing, because I can't outspend them, my competition. I can't outslotting fee them. I can't out coupon them. I can't do any of those sorts of things. So I have to change the game. I have to do something net different. And ideally it's a place of white space that they can't even follow. So, we chose a more sophisticated young adult consumer to go after, which is not for kids, because, in the back of an Annie's box, push the bunny's tail to open the box, or craft box is like noodle art to do with your 3-year-old. Like, we just decided to not go there and skate to a space that it would be difficult for them to follow. So that idea of like bowling pins, being really, really clear about which one you want to knock down first. And the truth is you're going to knock down others later, but to start, you just have to be crystal clear on like the thing that you want to do really, really well. And ideally it's a bowling pin that can knock down others. So we get families, even if our marketing isn't exactly targeted at little kids, we get young families, or we get athletes, and we get, all these other things, but you can't do all those things all at once. You got to pick.
Yeah, I mean, focus at the end of the day. It's like, do you know where you're going, and do you know how you're going to get there? And I think all of you touched on budget or capital at some point, on either it's a resource constriction, like, do you have the budget to be able to do it, or where's it coming from? I know you mentioned evolving capital markets.
Yep.
And knowing that you've all been in the industry for a good amount of time, looking at how capital has evolved over the last several years and where it stands today, what recommendations would you have for brands that are looking to scale today in today's capital market? Like, where should they be focusing, and what's top of mind for you? Ari, if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, no problem. I think I'll put it this way. In the old days, in the days when I was just kicking off Once Upon a Farm, a really great branding with a really unique product, and really good positioning in terms of who you want to reach, were really the main things that we needed in the early days to get investors to write checks. I think today there's a little bit more that you need. I think you also, along with those things, right? I think what gets investors very excited are having a path or even existing understanding of how you're going to build your business to very strong gross margins, especially today when costs are rising, co-packing costs, ingredient costs, packaging costs, right? You really have to showcase that you have a full understanding of how that's impacting your margin, and how you're sort of moving up against that to make sure that you are going to maintain healthy profitability in the long run. That's very important. And the other piece is, it is about that communication piece. It's exactly what Jen said. How do you knock down that first bowling pin of like knowing who your core target market is? How can you do it in a way that is low cost, repeatable, scalable, right? In a way that will allow you to maneuver around your competitors and grow at a faster rate than they are growing. So those are two like very difficult things to unlock, but they're very critical, in my opinion, to really unlock the value of the capital markets that are currently out there.
Totally agreed on the path to profitability, and a very, very clear, strong margin story, even from day one. No doubt, just gotta have it. Otherwise, what are you doing? Because the story of we'll scale later, or once we get acquired, they'll scale it later, or they'll get better margins later. Like, that doesn't play anymore. I don't know if it ever did, but that, Ari, to your second point, I think that I think there were a lot of companies who are like, we'll throw a lot of paid media against it, or this or that or that. I've never believed that was a big driver of businesses. So you have to have a plan, in the case of Once Upon a Farm, and we, by bringing on Gal as my co-founder on our team, 100 million followers helps to get the word out on things, definitely helps. But there's other things as well. I think that if you know our brand, you may know we're a little bit weird, and we're definitely kooky, and it's I don't know, we do very odd and strange things, which is both part of the brand, but it also is strategic because it's something that we can do, that we make our own news by being extra weird and we can out weird our competitors, we can out authentic our competitors, and there are things that cost almost no money to be odd. And I think this is a good takeaway for anybody listening. Like, for example, on April Fool's Day, we took all of our flavors, and so we have so much fun with our names. And we took every single flavor and renamed on the site using some of the names that are on the cutting room floor that we would never consider actually using, because it was either not very PC or very R-rated or whatever it was. It was just like, we would never do that. But on April 1st, we did. We had things like Twist My Parm became Kiss My Asiago, just all kinds of very funny things. And we were a little nervous about it, and we did it. And we had 10x the sales that day, that 24-hour period. And I was actually nervous. I was like, oh my God, do they actually think it's like a one-day LTO? I mean, we made it really clear. It was like coming never and all of those sorts of things. But so we called customer service and we're like, oh my God, do people think they're actually getting Kiss My Asiago product or something? They're like, no, they totally got the joke. They just thought it was hysterical. And they just love this brand and this company. So they ordered a bunch more. We're like, okay. So that's just examples. Like, those are the things that craft, your incumbent can't do it, but you can, and you've got to have a whole engine and a whole team of people thinking that way, because it actually is a strategic competitive advantage against anybody else who has the plan of just throwing paid media against it. That's not really a plan. So both of those things I completely agree with. And it's been a fun journey for Goodles, for sure.
Yeah. I'm still waiting for my Kiss My Asiago product. So, that's awkward there.
You were the one?
No, I think I completely agree with what both said. And I think, Ari, you mentioned it is, and Jen, you scratched at it. We have to be thinking about the mode and why we're different and how we're different and what our strategic advantages are, because we're not as capitalized as the pirate ship we're trying to storm.
Yep.
And if anybody's ever worked in a big CPG business or a medium-sized CPG business, is that there's fear and there's levels of tape that you have to get through. So they just can't get out and do the Kiss My Asiago stuff. And so I definitely implore, and I think Coconut Cult does as well, and we do our own cheeky version of it, is to be 100% authentically you. And that is your North Star. And it's okay to get some backlash every once in a while, because that means you're doing it right. But if you're never getting backlash, you're probably not pushing the boundary enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely feel that. I think you had a unicorn at Target that was going up the escalator. And I'm sure it wasn't the most expensive reel to make, but I thought it was great. And it was how I learned about the brand.
Yeah, that's Uni, and he is a wind-up toy that cost us $2, and he shows up in everything, and we film everything ourselves. So we're just closing a round of funding, but one thing that I've promised is that we will not hire a marketing agency. We'll not hire, nothing is going to get glitzier or glammier or anything. This team is still going to be filming stuff out in the parking lot and doing weird things on our own, because I think that's another reason why the consumers are rooting for us, because our stuff looks it does not look corporate. And as you know, right now, there's definitely a backlash against big and corporate stuff. So if you see us continuing to do weird and scrappy things, all of that it's both more fun and it actually works better and it sells more products. So I wish I had known that way, when my first company. I finally figured it out now, but it's definitely both fun and lucrative. So
yeah, it's been a theme throughout both days, I think, with companies across the board, just double clicking on the authenticity piece, finding their original voice. And one thing that you had mentioned I wanted to dive a little bit deeper on was about your people and kind of aligning them in a direction of where you want to go. On our first panel this morning about growing retail doors, it was 3 founders, and they were talking about kind of that transition from founder to CEO. They were maybe CEO by title the entire time, but their job of actually operating like a CEO was coming later and evolving year over year, where maybe they weren't able to be as hands-on with things. And a lot of people were working with business coaches to figure out that transition. So now that you're, all CEOs, but have the experience of being a founder who scaled, what are your recommendations for being a really good CEO in terms of managing your team and managing your people? And Jen, you had mentioned it, so if you'd be interested in starting.
Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, you're totally right. I'm about to start being a CEO for the first time in 18 months. Just because we're finally at the point where we can have a CMO and we can have a head of sales and we can have all of these roles, and you're not slash everything in under the sun. Totally, it's definitely a challenge, and I do think that it's organizationally a challenge as well. As soon as you go and put in kind of that tier two, like everybody kind of loves the flat phase when everyone reports to the CEO and it's just a shoulder to shoulder team when there's no hierarchy or any of those sorts of things. So making sure that the organization understands that in order to scale and to keep growing, like we have to have, and I think, usually the teams sees me going crazy and literally it's like the Stretch Armstrong with like goo spilling out everywhere. So it's understandable, like it has to happen. But I think it is definitely a tricky thing. And making sure that, we over-index on culture, especially when organizations are a little more remote and all of those sorts of things. We over-index on culture, over-index on people. I think I would expect that Ari and Matt, you would agree that the majority of your time is spent on, people and making sure that they feel connected to the vision, feel connected to one another. Like they're just front and center always for us. And that is like the hardest part. The other thing that I do in this transition is really, we talk about our why, which is our mission, and our goals and that kind of core essence of the brand all the time. 20 times a day we talk about it. There isn't one team meeting where we're not reminding or nominating someone or calling someone out for living our values or any of those sorts of things. Like that becomes the North Star as everyone starts to get a little bit bigger and take on more roles and responsibilities. I think that focus on culture becomes really, really important. And then I'm also a huge fan of just structure. We have like the objectives and key results. So like for the year, we always have the same mission and vision, but each year, like what we're going after is slightly different. So being clear on our OKRs and making sure that everyone is completely aligned to it is the other way that we stay kind of connected as we scale.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think the only thing I would add to that is just, we're in the human business too. And I spend a lot of time just like getting back to, when there's highs and lows is like, this is the beauty of what we do. Like we're humans before we're anything else. And like really developing real, deep, honest, vulnerable relationships. Right. And like, I think that makes this whole journey that we're on so much more compelling. Right. Because if you can rally a group of people that share common values and you can achieve great results, then that's almost even more fun than the financial outcome.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with what you both said. I would just, from my personal experience, and I think from all of our experiences, well, Jen, yours is a little bit different because you're also a co-founder of Goodles, but in my case, I was a founder, and then I joined a company with founders as CEO.
Right.
So I had that unique, and Matt as well, we both had that unique experience of coming in, knowing what they were feeling, because I remember how I felt when I had a CEO come into Once Upon a Farm. And there's definitely a period of time that there's an adjustment period that can be very challenging, right? To go from being the person who calls all the shots to all of a sudden, having to give someone else that responsibility. But the truth is that as hard as it is to accept that, assuming you made a good choice, right? If you are willing to open yourself up, have those hard conversations, be very honest and open with your team. From my perspective, it took me about 5 months to fully feel connected to the leadership team to the founding team, to the point where we all felt like we had alignment to be able to really move forward on the strategy that I was laying out. But in getting there, we were able to build such a powerful unit where I was able to really get the team to focus on the things that they were really good at and strip away the responsibilities that they, again, being founders, right, you're going to take everything on. But at the end of the day, as you know, in order to scale, you have to be willing to let go of those responsibilities. And Jen, you touched on that as well. And I think that's a really important piece of it.
Yeah, I think that's great to understand kind of your perspective as the CEO, because there are people on these calls that are also operators, right? They want to be the CMO. They want to be in that C-level spot. And I'd love to hear your perspective from the perspective of a CEO. How can somebody in your organization be contributing a lot of value if they want to be moving up to an executive position? Like, what are things they should be mindful of, and what are ways to communicate that within the organization? I think it's rare to hear like the CEO perspective of, hey, these are the things that I value in a leadership team, and this is what I'm looking for, if you're not, already in leadership. So I would love to hear, Matt, if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, for the cultures that I've been involved with, and like that's the beauty thing about culture, they're all different. I think we've always valued proactiveness, and really just coming to the table with thoughts and ideas, and then having like a really open conversation and like weeding out the bad ones and picking the good ones. And so like for the teams that we've built, I've always really fostered that mentality that like everybody has a great idea to contribute. And if you want to continue to grow in the business, like keep contributing ideas and how we improve, right? Like the beautiful thing about all startups is, in every growing company, the reason it's growing is because it's improving, right? And so like they're a constant improvement machine. And that's why it's fun, because there's stuff to fix and stuff breaks and you need to do something better and rebuild it. And I think that culture to me helps the flywheel of success in these industries.
I'm doing a ton of thinking about this right now because we do a ton of hiring from within. Like this is such a magical place that we bring in, that oh my God, my Saint Bernard is snoring next to me. I'm so sorry. It's so loud. I just don't even know what to say. That's Manolo. But we think about this a ton because we're growing these VPs within our organization who have never really been there before and working the way up. And it's so true that some of the things that have made you great at the junior level are a little different, and it's slightly different criteria as you move up. And I would definitely emphasize, like that heads down, do anything, willing to do it all is amazing, and it's great. And CEOs need to do it too. And like everyone has to have that. But you start to be judged as you move up the organization in how well you lift others, how well you share. It's how well you connect and you say and you sync and make sure that you're making sure that you're lifting others. That like heads down, blinders on mentality starts to actually be a hindrance as you move up the organization. So and then that plus the making sure that you really understand what you're doing and how it connects to the business strategy. And I think that's a really big thing that I'm always watching for. Do you want, there's marketers who want to market, or who they just want to do their paid media, and that's the exciting part. But what if paid media doesn't get us to our business goal? What if you're the head of e-commerce growth, maybe you want to come and say, I think we can take down our paid media spend. And here's why, because I think it is more beneficial to the company, thinking about the big picture and not just about your role, but like how to build the best possible company with legendary business results. If you can have that perspective, or even if you don't understand it, come to your CEO and be like, why am I I'm like filming little unis on the thing, and like, why am I doing it again? And I'll be like, oh, thank you so much for asking. It's because our earned media and our buzz costs us nothing. And that is a strategic competitive advantage. When we go to exit, we're spending almost nothing on this stuff. And they're like, got it. Okay. And then they communicate that to the rest of their team. So like, at least ask the question and make sure you understand your role within you're here to help grow and build a legendary business, not to do your your job. So if you can communicate, if you can share, if you can grow others and stay connected to the big vision, those are all things that you can do to signal that you are ready. You're ready to move up and be a leader in an organization.
I have nothing to add to that. It's perfect.
No, come on, Ari.
Well, all I could say is be, as the leader, as the CEO or the founder of your organization, if that's you listening right now, be open-minded, listen to ideas, listen to, people who have different ideas that conflict with the way you think things should be done, right? Because you're not always right. And I think that you also, there's also a component where as a leader, you need, in order to get people to the point where they feel comfortable stepping up, you need to also open up more trust towards that person and give them the opportunity to feel comfortable stepping up, right? So you need to create open lines. You need to create the culture that really allows people, again, to feel, I guess, not nervous or like they're stepping on someone's toes. You really need to foster a culture that embraces open communication, open dialogue, people with different opinions coming together and not having arguments, but being able to have actual conversations about things to overall improve, right? And moving towards a greater good. That's been just transformational for us. So.
And to Matt's point, this is like, nobody has the right answer. Some of these things, like what's working here was exactly the opposite of what worked at my last company. Like everything has a different cadence.
Yeah.
And we all are doing some form of trial and error. We just are. So that also, to Ari's point, like celebrating failures, like who figured out that something didn't work? Because if you can figure out that something doesn't work really fast, that's amazing. We just saved an entire year of not doing that. We get to go try something different. Yeah. So celebrating, like, guess what? We know this doesn't work. Yes, love that. Those are the kinds of things that, a leader should put in place to give people permission to be like, I'm trying stuff. And I have a way to just assess whether it's working or not working. And I'm going to kill it as fast as possible. We're going to do something different with it. Like all of those things are signals of, great people who are in the middle of the doer part of the organization that are like thinking bigger about it and absolutely are ripe for candidates for moving up within an organization. So.
And you guys are also like eloquent and inspirational. I have to ask, because I know people are wondering, like, did you rely on anybody in that time period? Did you work with advisors or mentors or even like community? How have other people been instrumental in your journey growing professionally to where you are today?
Yeah. You go first. I see Ari goes first. You go.
Okay. So I learned a lot about how to manage teams and create a sense of belonging and openness from, working under John Foraker. A lot of it was directly just copying his management style. But that being said, Coconut Cult is a very different company from Once Upon a Farm. And I had to work very hard at changing certain ways that I think about what is important and, in fact, most important to a growing brand. Because again, Once Upon a Farm and Coconut Cult are completely different brands. There's completely different marketing strategies, and especially working with founders who are, who built their brand based on being really weird, right, and doing really strange things, and me not knowing how, what to make of some of it. It took me a lot of time to get there, to get to a point where I could open myself up and learn to trust in the process, and even the stuff that didn't work, or sometimes it's better to try something that doesn't work than to not try at all, because the lesson you get is so valuable. So in that sense, I have grown, I think, as a leader since joining the Coconut Cult, because of what I learned not only from my past at Once Upon a Farm, but in engaging with this very talented founding team at Coconut Cult as well.
Yeah, I mean, through my journey, I'm just I'm a big believer in just really open feedback. And I've had a lot of great mentors through the years for both investors and advisors and just people that are not even associated, right? And I think the one thing I'll say for anybody that's in this industry, that's the beauty of this industry, is that it is so tight and willing and open to help, right?
Yeah.
And I encourage everybody at every level of a company to find their tribe, not only in the business, but in other businesses. Because in my experience, like, Ari and I will talk all the time about an issue that's going on, or like, how would you resolve that? And like, it happens at every level. The CEOs are all talking. The VP of ops should all be talking. The VP of sales should all be talking because everybody's better, right? And so I'm a big believer in that, right? In that, like, at the end of the day, what we're all doing is we're building our own brands. There's a lot of similarities across it, but people are going to build their brands. And there's really not that much in this industry that's secret, right? It's like execution, 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 and your brand and your personality and your vibe. And that's what builds these outcomes. So I'm a big believer in like that cross collaboration across the industry.
Yeah, agreed. And across industries. I think that's a really interesting one, because I think, Goodles has kind of said, okay, there's a classic food CPG playbook that's been around since the 1980s. What if you did a mashup with fashion and like learn things from entertainment and brought in some other things like that? Like, there are things, we do these like LTO drops where we sell out super fast, and it's why can't we learn from sneakers, all that kind of stuff? Like, there's ideas everywhere. And so not just within the food industry, but if you can kind of get even outside of the industry and hear what's working within even parallel things, that's kind of, I mean, there's some like musicians that literally play two radios at the same time to hear things that don't normally go together. And I love that. I love the mashups that start to happen when you're like, what if I do that? Sometimes it really doesn't work. There's so many bad ideas on our cutting room floor, but sometimes and they really are, they catapult the business forward. So yeah, totally agree with both of you guys. And you're both, I agree, you're both very inspirational. So
you all are. And we have so many audience questions I am now seeing that we're going to jump over to those and try to knock some of them out. But to start, we have a great one. And it was talking about fractional leadership. So bringing in a fractional CFO, fractional CMO, before you bring somebody on, full-time that's more experienced. What are your thoughts on doing that? And have you done it in the past? Do you have any recommendations?
Oh, this one's tough. I think it's so specific to the role, like and company and like what you're doing. My gut says I tend not to like it generally, right? But I think that it can be really a force multiplier if you do it at the right stage with the right role. And I know that's vague, but it's every company's different. Like if you're a turnkey kind of operations business, you can probably have like an outsourced COO for a bit, right? Because there's management of the turnkey. If your business is very performance marketing, I think having an outsourced CMO is really hard, right? I think you need to have that expertise in-house. So I think it's just so specific to the business. I don't think it's a hard no. I'm like 70% no.
Yeah, from my end, I would say hard no, but if you're resource strapped, right, which is not uncommon. When I first joined Coconut Cult, we had a few months of runway, to be honest. It was a interesting situation, and I had to bring people on because there were things that needed to happen that I wasn't going to be able to raise the money I needed to raise if I wasn't able to bring certain levels of expertise on board. So I was able to, and this is what I would recommend if you're able to do this, and you really do this by networking as much as possible, reaching out to people you trust in the industry, joining your local naturally chapter if you have one, or however you can make connections, but find really excellent people who can be available to you as a contractor, that are open to the potential for, full-time position. So you can give them a chance, test them out, and with the knowledge that, once we get through this rocky stage, when we're on firmer ground, I want to bring you in full-time. That would be, to me, a much better way to do it than to hire someone to like be a permanent fractional this or that.
Yeah, I think the one other thing would be your first hires are so key.
Yeah.
So if you don't have the perfect person, then go fractional. If you're not totally certain that that is who is going to get you where you need to go, absolutely, like just start, like just test it out first before you do it, because it's just so hard to change course or to get rid of people early on. And so just make sure you're sure. I mean, that's also the benefit of being so old like I am. I've worked with so many different companies and I know so many people. So if I have one superpower, it's like collecting the most amazing people I've ever worked with. So if you have those relationships and you can get them and you can pick up the bat phone and be like, it's happening, I need you right now, and they drop everything to come join you, then great. But if you can't get that perfect person and you're on the fence, start with a contractor, start something like that until you've got that perfect person, because it's just too hard to, if you're going fast, then it becomes really, really hard to course correct if it's.
And one more thing I would add to that is there are companies that specialize in like outsourced ops or outsource this or outsource that. And they're fine, right? I actually use an outsourced accounting firm right now, which I think is fairly typical for brands at a certain stage. The caveat being, in the long run, with a lot of these outsourced companies, especially on the ops side, generally they'll have you spending way more money than you need to. So don't, if you're going to go that direction, the sooner you can bring that in-house, the better.
Right.
And that was perfect. Another one of the questions is about like the right time to bring on employees. And I feel like a lot of that answered it, like resource constraints and finding the right person and kind of balancing the two. But there's another timing question in here that's interesting. And specifically, because we're here talking about retail in this virtual conference environment, but we have a D2C brand and they're evaluating going into retail, but they're trying to decide like when to pull the trigger, if they should do it. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh God. Make sure you're operationally ready. I mean, again, I guess it depends if you're going in regional and you're going into just like a few natural grocers, that's one thing. But like we went national at Target first out of the gate. I repeat, do not go unless you are certain that you can do flawless execution and not just get the first order out the door, but the weekly order that's going to come. So check your supply chain, really make sure that you understand the economics of that and all the ins and outs on the operations side. Because it's high stakes. There's no point of doing it if you are going to fail or miss a shipment or any of those sorts of things. So you got to be really, really ready.
Totally. And the other thing on that is like, if you're a D2C native brand, you love your life because your feedback loop is daily, if not week, if like hourly, if you're really on it, right? And when you start to go into brick and mortar, it's unfortunately a bit more archaic and slower feedback loops in regards to how it's doing. And, so my only kind of like watch out would be know that and spend more time on the front end with like pricing and pack out and size and codes. There's so many things that you have to do to get into retail.
Stickers. Do you know what you have to sticker?
Yeah, like
you
there's
have
so
to
many
sticker,
things.
how much it
Label
costs
requirements.
to sticker.
If you don't do it right at the get-go, the compounding on the expense side is very large. Where like on a D2C, you're like, oh, we'll just change that ad copy, right? And we can ship that product. And so it's just a lot more expensive not getting it right. And I think, I don't know, Ari and Jen, but like we still get it wrong sometimes, right? And we've been in retail and we'll still do something.
I never get it wrong. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I don't know about you, Ari. It's for me, I get it wrong sometimes, right? So I think it's hard to do that, but I would just spend time with somebody in retail, really poking holes at like the pricing, the pack out, the the item size, the master case, and like to Jen's point, like, how do you want to promote it? Where do you want to promote it? What channel strategy? What distributors? And like really get that down instead of just like, oh, we're going to go into retail.
Yeah. And I really understand why you want to do this, because if you're going into retail, this is like a long-term game.
Yeah.
You're going to make lower margins per sale. You're going to have to make more units to make less money. It's not really going to pay off for years, right? So you really have to be committed to doing this for like the long run. So
And
really,
potentially
really,
a whole parallel team, because your D2C
Yep.
marketer may not be ready to do shopper marketing and what's required for those those TPRs and those shelf talkers. Like
when you ask your D2C marketer to make me a sales sheet with item codes, they're gonna be like, what do you right? Yeah, I need the
it's more cost. Like you have to be ready for the team, that like all of those sorts of things. So that's the reality.
Totally.
And that perfectly tees up our last question. So this couldn't have gone better in terms of structure, but we're talking about scale, right? And we've been at brands, we've left those brands, we're at new brands, we're scaling to somewhere is the idea, right? And whether that's every retail distribution, whether it's a path to exit, there's some consideration about where people are trying to scale their brands. And what do you think the leader of the organization, the founding team, the founding executives should be mindful of when they're thinking about scale in terms of destination at the beginning or in the process?
This resonates with my first journey versus our second journey here. Is I made the mistake in Barnetta days because we were young and naive and altruistic and like had these big, where I told everybody that like we're building the next Cliff Bar and this is Patagonia and like we're gonna be together forever and we're building this next thing that has staying power. And I just was too young to realize that the capital we raised had a timeline and a horizon on it. And those things sometimes are incongruent, not all the time. And so I think the second time around, I'm a lot more intentional about that, around like, hey, we're professionals here executing on a great idea and a great vision, but we're still professionals here and we have a duty to return shareholder value. And to do that, we have to execute on this plan, right? Or a plan close to that we all agree on that we can do. And I feel that the businesses that I was referencing, like Patagonia, or like Cliff, they had like a 30-year head start and they didn't raise money and it was a whole different journey, right? And I was trying to build brands that I aspired to in a new age capital market, which was inconsistent, right? And so I think we're all struggling to figure this out today of like really efficient capital markets, building fast growth brands, but inspired by brands that have been around for, 100 years that had a different kind of first 20-year journey than we are going to be having.
Yeah. And also, when you talk about if you look at, the first 7 or 8 years of some of the, the OGs of our industry, right? The first 7 or 8 years of Annie's, or the first 7 or 8 years of Ben & Jerry's, or the first 7 or 8 years of Stonyfield, they didn't grow that much. They didn't grow that fast, right?
Yeah.
And the expectation today is, that you're right. What is James Richardson called the riding the ramp, right? So maybe the first 3 years you're growing slowly, but then you hit this inflection point and it's to the moon, right? And if you don't get there, what then? There's a lot of brands that I know of personally that got to the like 10 to 15 million range and just aren't able to scale beyond that. And they're really struggling now with how do you grow beyond that? And I think that's a direct result of, right, a lot of money coming in pre-COVID, especially to these brands that everybody just assumed would go to the moon. And, that is a challenge. It's really not focusing on going to the moon. It's saying, okay, when I get to 10 to 15 million, is my business going to be sustainable no matter what? Like, am I going to be able to run this thing off our own steam if we're not getting past that mark? Because as you rightly said, Matt, like investors get impatient. And if you have a cash flow positive business, you're automatically in the running for acquisition way more than a business that needs to continue raising rounds to grow. So
also, you say, okay, sorry, but we're good. We actually don't need your money, right? So you just have more leverage, right?
Even better, yeah.
And the other part of this that you guys are, kind of hinting on is like we're having such a good time. This team loves working together. So it is a little weird to say our goal is to not be working together anymore. Like, we're going to get acquired and it'll be like probably the saddest day of our lives. I hope y'all little millionaires, but I'm telling you now, it's gonna be the saddest day of your lives when this happens. But how do you do both those things? And so we kind of have a mission and a vision that we use, which is, we're an elite team, locked arms, working shoulder to shoulder, working with joy and doing the best work of our lives in order to create a legendary product and a legendary brand that is generating legendary business results and legendary impact in our communities. Like, that's what we're doing this for. It's not just, it doesn't end at having fun and doing the best work of our lives. Yay. It's like, we're doing this to have a really an amazing outcome. And we want it to be in Harvard Business Review. We want it to be all of those things. And it'll be sad, but it'll be pretty cool at the same time. So I think being honest about it up front, that this pace is for a reason. And who knows, maybe afterwards we'll all get the band back together and we'll do something again. But, that balancing of the enjoying the here and now, but knowing that there's a fast and hopeful, end in mind, it's tough. It's tough to balance both those things as a leader, for sure.
Well, I think that was perfectly said, all of you. Jen, Ari, Matt, we are unfortunately at time, but thank you. This was a great way to end the conference. We're so grateful to you. Thank you to everybody who attended. All of these sessions will be sent or posted online or shared somehow. So thank you for coming, and we'll check in soon.
Thank you, guys. See you later.
Bye-bye, everybody.